Hello, just a few minutes to go before we get started. I'm just wondering if you go in your chat box there and see if you can hear me, just confirm with a yes. Okay, looks like we're getting some. Okay, welcome to the second lesson in the Be Safe in Your Space for Preteens program. I'm Gary Simmons. Last week we examined who and what troublemakers are, exactly what is your space and how it's affected by everybody else's space. How the brain is the key element of knowing how to be safe in your space. The concept of the higher self and being in bodyguard mode. What is the spirit and how to develop it. How important it is for you to teach your kids about consequences. Verbal and emotional psychological attacks. The importance and skill of journaling. The types of bully your child is likely to encounter at school. With last week being the first lesson in the Be Safe in Your Space program, we had to examine in detail quite a few conceptual ideas and strategies. To change pace this week, I want to concentrate on giving you some practical techniques such as what to do if your child's school is not adequately dealing with a bullying or harassment situation and a problem continues despite you voicing your concerns. As well as that, I think it's important that you should now begin to start developing some effective techniques for situations where you may inadvertently find yourself face to face with a troublemaker, because if you're able to hone and develop these techniques yourself, then you'll be able to transfer these skills to your child or any other family member. So let's get started. The best tactic to avoid an unwanted interaction with someone deliberately coming into your space and trying to engage in an unwelcome conversation, or worse, is to stay disconnected from them. In today's lesson, we're going to examine some techniques including how to breathe and where to look, so that you can coach your child to have some practice responses if they ever become anxious, nervous and unconfident when they have to interact with a confronting person. These techniques are classic Be Safe in Your Space because they involve indirect strategies, which means that in the vast majority of cases, the troublemaker will have no idea of what's going on. Stress directly affects the way people breathe. For example, if an average person suddenly is confronted with an extreme situation, like a physical attack, they instinctively tend to react in one of two ways. They either freeze by becoming very tense, which leads them to holding their breath, or they panic, which leads to hyperventilating or breathing at a rate that's too fast and shallow. Both of these responses result in the body releasing stress hormones, which makes it harder to keep calm, rational and clear-headed, because the body is gearing up for a fight or flight response, which can affect our thought patterns, particularly for kids, who can easily become overwhelmed as this involuntary physiological process envelops them. Last week, we looked at the process of how we tend to make decisions is based on our feelings. So a direct effect of being in a state like this, either fight or flight, is that everyday decisions, and for some people, life decisions, are made or at least heavily influenced by knee-jerk emotional feelings as opposed to the deeper, more powerful feelings drawn from the higher self. This can especially be the case under stressful conditions, such as being suddenly harassed by a troublemaker and not knowing what to do. Therefore, in times of high stress, the first thing that needs to be managed is your breathing. Let's look at the basics. All conventional self-defense moves, as well as non-violent self-defense techniques, are most effective when they're applied in conjunction with an appropriate breathing technique. Breathing techniques are a way to regulate an ample supply of oxygen into the body, mind, and spirit, as well as to keep the mind and ego in check, so it's possible to be in control of the situation by responding instead of having no options by being reactive. In the traditional martial art of Taekwondo, there's a technique that's called chumbi. The word chumbi literally means ready. The technique itself is a means to quieten the mind by turning your focus inwards by using a controlled breathing technique that's coordinated with a specific hand and foot action. In today's lesson, we're not going to work on learning chumbi in the traditional way. Instead, we're going to examine the breathing technique that's within it, because this technique is vital in being able to emotionally disconnect from a troublemaker, as well as projecting a calm facade, despite what you or your child may be feeling on the inside. It just takes practice. In the context of knowing how to be safe in your space, I call this breathing technique for when you become either scared, anxious, or unconfident, when you're suddenly confronted with harassment from a troublemaker, as finding your edge. The aim of finding your edge is to regain some clarity and focus when you first become aware of being ego-driven, tense, or emotional in a way so no one else will notice, especially the troublemaker. Let's work on finding your edge right now. The basic idea is to focus your attention on the lower abdomen area, which is said to be the source of your life force, or qi, as it's known within Oriental practices such as martial arts, Tai Chi, and Qigong. The exact area can be found by placing your hand sideways on your lower stomach, with the side of the thumb over the belly button. The idea is to concentrate your breathing on this region directly below the little finger, about one hand span away from the belly button, which in Taekwondo is known as the danshin. It's all in the breathing. People who have not practiced a breathing technique like this before tend to breathe from their chest. This technique starts by you slowly breathing in through the nose, so this lower abdomen area rises, and then falls on the out-breath through the mouth. This sort of movement can take a little practice because quite often this muscle group can be lazy through lack of use. An effective way to initially develop this particular breathing technique is to lie down flat on your back and place a hand over the danshin area. As you gently breathe in through the nose, you feel the lower abdomen expand up into your hands. You hold it for a couple of beats and then contract it back down by exhaling out through the mouth. To keep an internal focus while you're learning this technique, close or semi-close your eyes, which is optional because in practical situations during everyday life, you do need to keep your eyes open. Also, you have to do this breathing technique gently without forcing the air in any way. Remember, these techniques for being safe in your space must be done in a way so if you were face-to-face with a troublemaker, they'd have no idea that you were doing a technique. Subtlety is the key here. So, to quickly find your edge, you slowly and gently breathe in through your nose to the count of 6, hold your breath to the count of 3, then breathe out through the mouth to the count of 6, and then hold your breath to the count of 3, and keep repeating. The aim is to maintain this constant cycle or rhythm of breathing. Remember, the inhalation and exhalation are done to a 6 count, so it's critical to breathe slowly, and this is how you develop breath control. So, are you ready to have a go? Okay, make yourself comfortable and gently close your eyes. Place your hand sideways over the Danchin area with a thumb on top of your belly button. Also, imagine in your mind's eye that you can see the breath as you slowly and gently inhale and exhale. Let's begin. Gently breathe in through your nose to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold your breath to the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Then gently breathe out through the mouth to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. In through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. Out through the mouth to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold to the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Gently breathe into the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold to the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Out through the mouth to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. Then out to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. Go through a few more cycles in your own time now. Remember, in through your nose, hold, out through your mouth, and bear in mind that if you were face to face with a troublemaker, would they be able to tell that you're breathing in a special way? This is very important. That's it. Just a few more. I'll bring you out of it soon. A good way to bring your focus back into the external realm is to gently close your hands and rub your thumb against your fingers as you slowly open your eyes. Remember, you just practice this breathing technique to train yourself on how it's actually done. The key now is to apply it in everyday life situations. And I'm not just referring to situations that involve troublemakers. This finding your edge breathing technique is a means to instantly release yourself from an emotional state to being present. So you have the correct mindset to either respond to someone or let go of an upset or anxiety at any time. While at work, in the dentist chair, when you're stuck in traffic and running late, or immediately prior to an important meeting. Take the time to become proficient in applying the finding your edge breathing technique yourself, and then work with your kids so they can grasp this important life skill. Which leaves the question, how can I actually teach my child to do a relatively complex breathing technique such as that? Well, one way is to introduce them to a simpler technique, which I call power pause breathing, which is easier to learn than finding your edge. In recent times, there's been some study on how breathing affects us emotionally and psychologically. It's been discovered that the act of sighing can quickly and dramatically release us from severe stress and upsets. In times of stress, most people tend to let go of a sigh organically, without thinking. Keep your eye out and see if you can notice this with yourself and the people around you over the week. The power pause breathing technique is based on this principle and is a really simple and effective way to help your kids and yourself to quickly let go of stress. So what you do is wait for a situation where your child is getting over a significant upset and you're debriefing with them. Acknowledge their upset by asking them in a gentle and compassionate way, "That must have been quite upsetting to have Timmy to do that to you. Are you feeling bad? Can you tell me what that feels like?" Or, "It must have made you mad when Susie broke your iPad. Are you still feeling angry about it? Can you tell me how you're feeling? When they tell you, try saying something like, every single person gets upset or mad about things sometimes, even me. And I know it's not a very nice feeling. I've found a good way to help me get over a feeling, feeling bad, is doing what's called the power pause breath, which is a special way of breathing that makes you feel really good. How about I show you how I do it, and then if you ever find yourself starting to feel upset or mad, you can do it too. Okay? This is what you do. Imagine that you're starting to feel upset about something, or someone has done something that makes you feel mad. When you notice this feeling, imagine that you have a short straw and a glass of water. What you do is to slowly take a deep breath in through your nose and then gently blow through the imaginary straw into the imaginary glass of water as though you're blowing tiny bubbles. When you breathe in, you have to pretend that someone is watching you and you're hiding the way in which you breathe in through your nose. So you have to do it very gently. Then when you breathe out, you can't splash the water all over the place. So you have to make very small bubbles. Let's do it together 5 times. First though, I want you to pretend that you're mad or really upset. Can you do that? Show me what that looks like. Oh, that's awful. Good job. Okay. Are you holding your imaginary straw? Now, slowly breathe in through your nose so nobody can tell you are. Then hold your straw in the glass of water and blow tiny bubbles. That's once. At this point, you hold up one finger. Let's do it again. Slowly breathe in through your nose. Then hold the straw and blow tiny bubbles. That's twice. Hold up 2 fingers. Breathe in through your nose. Remember, nobody must be able to tell that you're breathing in this way. Then hold your straw and blow tiny bubbles. That's 3 times. Now, in your own time, slowly breathe in through the nose and then blow tiny bubbles on out. That's 4. Hold up 4 fingers. One more time. In through the nose, then tiny bubbles on out. That's 5. Hold up 5 fingers. Do you feel much calmer now? Nod your head approvingly and say, it works well, doesn't it? Then you explain to them, every time you blow out through the straw and blow bubbles, you count to yourself by holding up a finger. Of course, when there are people around, you don't hold up your hand like I did just then. Instead, you hide your hand behind your back or in your pocket, or you just press each finger against the side of your leg so you know what number you're up to. Also, you just imagine that you're holding the straw in between your lips so you don't have to use your hand. Do you want to practice doing it like this together again? By this stage, they'll be loving your attention. So maximize this opportunity to practice this technique so your child has a clear understanding and is confident about doing the power pause breathing by themselves. Then you say, now Johnny, whenever you feel yourself getting upset or becoming mad, I want you to do the power pause breathing. Do you think you can do that? Good. Sometimes though, when we get upset or mad, we don't realize that we are. So if mum or dad sees this happening, we might say, you better go to your room, Johnny, and do the power pause. And then, if you can do that, things are going to be a lot calmer around here. Do you think that's a good idea? Over the next few weeks, keep this breathing technique on the forefront by saying things like, oh, I got a little bit mad at work today because someone did ABC. And you know what? I just did the power pause breathing and it made me feel so much better. Have you used it recently? Or, I've been so proud of the way you've been using the power pause breathing lately. I've noticed a huge improvement in the way you've been managing your moods. Well done. Then once you and your child are on the same page and comfortable at applying a simple breathing technique such as the power pause, in a few weeks, you can then say something like, I know another cool way to breathe so that whenever someone at school is being mean, it won't affect you so much. Do you want to practice it with me? Please bear in mind that these two breathing techniques are based on both scientific research and on the ancient wisdom of Taekwondo. They really work. Next, I'd like to work with you on another very effective Taekwondo technique that can be used by anyone in everyday life. It's a way to know exactly where you should look when you or your child are faced with someone who's confronting or scary. In the Be Safe in Your Space curriculum, I refer to what's commonly known as body language as physical expression. The reason is because in non-violent and conventional self-defense, there are a multitude of techniques that combine the way the body is used with, as we just discussed, breathing techniques, as well as tactics and strategies such as finding a space and defining the neutral zone, as we covered in the last lesson. There's also several others that we'll work on as the program continues. Basically, physical expression is the way in which an individual physically interacts with other people and in the way in which they indirectly demonstrate or show their confidence and self-esteem as a person. Unfortunately, if someone looks and acts like a soft touch or a victim, then the world will treat them accordingly. As we discussed in the last lesson, generally all contacts between people fall into three categories. Either person can be dominant, submissive, or neutral. At times when caution is required, the neutral option is best because it's how we can manage pushy or aggressive people in an indirect way by not allowing them to force a submissive reaction from us. This neutral principle is a vital component in the majority of strategies that we'll examine throughout this program. The eyes are definitely the mirror to your soul. And in most situations in life, we almost always tend to make the eye-line connection before any physical contact. Our eyes are the conduits that connect us with a troublemaker and their means of determining if we're a soft touch or someone to be avoided. The major factor when a troublemaker is deciding if an individual is going to be a worthwhile target for attention is their interpretation of this eye connection. If a troublemaker senses that a potential target is submissive, they'll likely make a contact. However, when a troublemaker senses that a person exudes a "don't mess with me" kind of attitude, they become the one who is motivated to keep some distance. Dominant people and animals, including cats and dogs, tend to use their eyes to stare at and intimidate their rivals into submission, which is first shown by the eyes in what I call the submissive eye line. This is where the eyes stay downcast or don't meet the aggressive person's gaze. When I work with kids, I call this scared eyes. On the other hand, there's the neutral eye line that demonstrates to a troublemaker that you're cool, calm and collected, despite what you may be feeling on the inside. A neutral eye line is where the eyes are neither challenging, downcast or fearful. They're expressionless. For kids, I describe this as having plain eyes. The following black belt eye line technique is specifically used for dealing with aggressive people and can be adapted into everyday life as an effective way to keep you or your child disconnected from anyone who may be trying to intimidate or psych you out. Black belts deal with intense or volatile individuals by firstly centering themselves so they can disengage emotionally by using the finding your edge breathing technique that we looked at earlier. This prevents a potential troublemaker from gaining an advantage by exploiting emotions such as the fear of physical violence or the fear of being excluded. A good way to avoid the inevitable intimidating gaze of an aggressive troublemaker is to slightly drop your gaze and to pinpoint or focus it onto a spot at either the bridge of the troublemaker's nose or on their top lip, depending on the distance between you. If a provocative troublemaker tries to go eyeball to eyeball with you, focus your gaze on the skin of their lower eyelid. The further away you are, the lower the gaze. Let's now look at an exercise to help you develop this practical skill so you're able to use it yourself, so you in turn can also help your child learn it. You find a partner who ideally is bigger than you, or at least your size. At this stage, don't use a young child until you're confident about using this technique yourself. Also, don't tell your partner what you'll be doing. Say you're doing an experiment and stress that there's to be no physical contact whatsoever from either you or them. Get them to specifically agree to this because it's very important in the success of this exercise. Once they've agreed, stand about 2 meters away from them, or 6 feet, and get them to feign aggression by pointing at your face and saying things in an exaggerated, mean voice, and if you're up for it, in a raised voice, such as, "What are you looking at? Did you call me something? Do you want a piece of me? I'm going to make your life hell. Just wait and see what I'm going to do to you." Tell your partner, if they run out of aggressive statements and threats, to either just repeat what they said over and over or make things up and say things as they go. The words are irrelevant because it's about the energy and the intent. As you stand there, notice what your eyes are doing. In most cases, you'll find that it's difficult to find a place for them to land. They'll drop down and tend to move around. They prefer to not look at the troublemaker. Once you ascertain this awareness, drop into the finding your edge breathing pattern that we worked on earlier. Remember, it's in through the nose for 6, hold for 3, out through the mouth for 6, hold for 3, and so on. Then consciously focus your gaze on a point that's between the troublemaker's top lip and the bottom of the nose, or the philtrum, and hold it there for about 40 seconds as you continue your breathing pattern. From this position, notice how you can still hear what the troublemaker is saying, yet you're not connecting with your eyes. Keep focused on your breathing, then disengage. Ask your partner if they, A, noticed what your eyes were doing, and B, if they noticed a change in where you were looking. In most cases, they'll have no idea. Now repeat the exercise again and stand about 1 meter or 3 feet away. This time, if you totally trust your partner, ask them to point at your face and gesture towards it with an object, such as a short stick, or if you're really game, a short knife. Of course, that's totally optional. As your partner is being aggressive with their words and tone of voice and with their gesturing with an object, notice how being much closer makes it even more difficult for your eyes to land. Once you notice this, breathe and focus your eyes on a point that's in the middle of the bridge of their nose. After about 40 seconds, disengage and debrief with your partner. Remember, at this time, they now have an idea about what you're trying to do, and they'll be more aware of your eyes. Nevertheless, ask them if they noticed what your eyes were doing and if they noticed a change in where you were looking. Now repeat this exercise one more time. This time, stand about 15 to 30 centimeters or 6 to 12 inches away. From this position, the troublemaker will be well and truly inside your space. Get them to speak in a cold, hard voice while they gesture towards you, gesture towards your face with an object. Remember, there's to be no physical contact. From this distance of literally being toe-to-toe with a troublemaker, your eyes won't know what to do. When you become aware of this, start your breathing and focus your gaze on one of their lower eyelids. Hold for about 40 seconds, then disengage and debrief as before. Often in the toe-to-toe exercise, you'll find that your aggressive troublemaker partner will be very confronted by having you so close to them inside their space, even though you were just standing there doing nothing. I must caution here that over the years, I've found that people tend to overcompensate for this by becoming carried away and laughing and joking because it's fun. The reason they do this is because this exercise puts pressure on your partner's neutral zone or space. However, having too much fun trivializes it, which it can severely detract from the whole point of this exercise, which is learning where to look when you're face to face with a troublemaker. When you use this eyeline technique confidently, the troublemaker only sees a steady, even gaze with no sign of anger or fear, which in most cases they find to be very unsettling. Every student at my black belt school must comprehensively understand this essential non-violent self-defense principle before they can get their black belt. I say comprehensively because these types of moves only work indirectly on an unconscious level when a troublemaker is unaware they're being manipulated. This is why it's so critical that all physical expression moves are only attempted in a very subtle way. Otherwise, they may backfire and bring you face to face with an irate troublemaker who feels justified in upping the ante. So, are you getting an idea on how to disconnect from a troublemaker? Type in yes in the chat box if you can do it. You get the idea. Oh, incidentally, some of these exercises will be part of your homework for this week. Some people are getting it. The next phase in knowing how to disconnect is knowing how to stand in relation to a troublemaker by utilizing stances, which means understanding the concept of relative positioning. Stances, or the way in which we stand in a particular situation, are another subtle yet powerful physical expression tool. The use of stances is another way to control a first encounter if the need arises. As well as that, there's a concept of knowing what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, which my research suggests is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for most people when they find themselves in situations where they must interact with the troublemaker. As you can imagine, there are quite a few practical applications and exercises for developing these skills, and this is what we're going to be exploring in depth next week. Before we end today's lesson, I'd like to change direction and discuss exactly what you should do if your child's experienced consistent bullying and harassment at school. And despite you raising your concerns with the school, no resolution seems to be in sight. In the last class, we touched on how since the dawn of time, kids have been teasing each other, and despite all of our political correctness, anti-bullying policies and procedures, they always will. However, if a child is subjected to constant psychological harassment, verbal abuse, or worse, physical abuse, it may be necessary to bring your concerns to the attention of the school. The first step is to get clear on exactly what's happening. There's no point going to the school and saying in an emotional way, "Some kids in Timmy's class are picking on him." In the previous lesson, we also spoke about the importance of journaling as part of the process for being safe in your space. So as soon as you're certain there's a problem at school, start documenting the events, the places, the circumstances, and the people who are involved, either actively as well as indirectly, and who was in charge at the time. If it was a cyberbullying incident, get a screenshot of the offending posts, as well as screenshots of everyone who liked the post or shared it. Next, speak to your child about it. Most kids are afraid that mum or dad are going to blunder into the school and blab to the teacher about their problems, which will be misunderstood and lead to them being faced with even more problems. So it's vital that you reassure them how you understand this fear or concern, and you'll not do anything or say anything that will betray their confidence in you. Ideally, try and get their permission to speak to the teacher. This will help them to gain trust in you as their coach and tactician. I also must advise that you resist the temptation of confronting the teacher at the school when you go to pick up or drop off your child. And definitely, don't go marching into the school with all guns blazing. Instead, send your child's teacher a polite email or call them on the phone to say that you have a concern and that you'd like to discuss, and when would be a good time to either talk or meet up. When you do get a chance to talk, do so in a factual way rather than in an emotional way. Say something as, "Thanks for meeting me, Susie. I just want to let you know that Timmy's been having a hard time lately because Johnny and Freddie have seen Timmy as a target and have been saying XYZ to him in the playground. It's not an isolated incident. Apparently it's been going on for a few weeks now and Timmy's quite upset." At this stage, leave it at that. Allow the teacher to respond. More than likely, the teacher will say something along the lines of, "Thanks for letting me know about that. I'll keep my eyes and ears open and I'll try to sort this out." Then stress to the teacher that your child is concerned that you speaking to them will make their situation go public and make things worse, so you'd appreciate discretion on their part. Do not mention the fact that you've been taking detailed notes about what's been happening. When you leave the meeting, record everything that was said in your journal. Also, bear in mind that teachers want a harmonious class and playground, and they don't want to see any bullying going on. They are on your side. Sometimes, though, the troublemakers are sneaky, and the teacher who's dealing with dozens of kids may not have picked up on anything as yet. Also, the teacher might be new and inexperienced, or is a replacement teacher and has not yet grasped the social dynamics within the school. Always give the teacher the benefit of the doubt. Also, keep journaling. If a problem persists, it's time to increase the pressure. Call the school and ask for an appointment to see the deputy principal. At the meeting, explain to the deputy the situation in the same way as you did to the teacher. Then add on, "I met up with Timmy's teacher Susie on so-and-so date, and she said she'll keep her eyes and ears open. Unfortunately, the problem is still there, and if anything, it seems to be getting worse." More than likely, the deputy will say something along the lines of, "Well, thanks for letting me know about this. I'll speak to Timmy's teacher and find out what's going on." Leave the meeting, journal everything, and make a note in your diary for a date that's 2 to 3 weeks in the future. If the problem persists and you haven't heard anything back, or if you feel that you were just given some lip service, it's time to increase the pressure with a letter or email to the principal. Explain the order of events. Not all the details from within your journal, just the order of events, including the days when the incidents occurred, as well as the days you met up with the teacher and the deputy principal. Then mention something along the lines of, "It appears that my concerns for the most part have been falling on deaf ears, as my child's still being subjected to ongoing harassment while he's at school. I'd therefore appreciate it if you could intervene in this matter and help us resolve this situation once and for all." Keep a hard copy of the letter or email. Journal it and then mark a date between 1 and 2 weeks in your diary. If nothing's been resolved in that time, send another letter that basically says something along the lines of, "For the last couple of months, my child has been subjected to continual and ongoing harassment at school. I've tried my best to follow the correct channels in reporting these issues so that they may be addressed and dealt with in an expedient way. Unfortunately, despite the school's management and staff's best intentions, there seems to be no resolution in sight, and as a parent, I feel this to be unacceptable. I feel it's now necessary for me to point out in no uncertain terms that the school has a duty of care to provide an inclusive educational environment for all children that's free from bullying, harassment and abuse. And as far as I'm concerned, this is not occurring, which indicates that there's a systemic problem at the school. Consequently, I want all stakeholders involved in this issue to be informed of the situation and brought together so that my child is able to continue his education and school life that's free from harassment and abuse." Keep a hard copy of the letter or email and journal it. This letter will compel the school to organise an intervention where you'll more than likely meet the parents of the offending children. Whatever you do, avoid launching an emotional tirade against them, as it can make you look like an unstable and over-emotional hover parent or even a troublemaker. If the other kid's parents turn on you at the meeting, drop into the finding your edge breathing technique and use the appropriate eye line and disconnect from them. Totally ignore them as if they were invisible. Instead, only speak to the school's representative. Let them tell you what they, the school, are going to do next. Remember everything that transpires and then journal everything that was said by everybody as best you can. At some point during one of these stages, you'll probably be asked something like, "So, what do you want us to do?" Then you can say in a calm yet firm voice, "I want a contract drawn up by the school where all the kids involved must sign a formal declaration where they agree to never do ABC to Timmy or any other child in the school and to never be the perpetrator of any other forms of harassment or abuse to Timmy or any other child. Then, if they break that agreement, they face suspension." In a horrible worst case scenario that gets really ugly, you must then compile a detailed report by using everything that you have in your journal and send a formal letter of complaint to the head of the education department and the school principal that chronicles everything that's transpired and how you want departmental intervention from the highest level because the school is either incapable or unable to resolve the culture of bullying. If the kids at the school continue their campaign, despite all the intervention, or if they threaten your child physically, go to the police with your detailed report and say that you fear for your child's safety and well-being and that you'd like to discuss the possibility of the kids concerned to be issued with a restraining order or to be charged. If the parents of the troublemaker's kids become aggressive towards you or anyone in your family, or if they threaten you, add the details to your report and go straight to the police to discuss the possibility of them being issued with a restraining order or to be charged. The next option is talking to a lawyer and getting them to write a letter that explains to the school and the education department that you're in a situation where, due to the constant and ongoing abuse your child has and continues to suffer while at school, you're preparing to outlay considerable expenses for your child's counselling and therapy sessions, for which you'll be seeking compensation, and that you'll also expect to be compensated for the pain and suffering that you and your family are experiencing as a direct result of the school's unwillingness or inability to resolve their bullying issues. This letter will certainly get their attention. However, realistically speaking, if it gets to that stage, the only real viable option is to make a strategic withdrawal and find another school. Of course, the chain of events I just described leads to the absolute worst case scenario, and in the vast majority of cases, the teacher and the school will be more than capable of working out an amicable solution. However, in case they don't, you now have some practical tools that you can use to regain control of a difficult situation, which is another of the key principles in knowing how to be safe in your space, which is expecting the best of outcomes while being prepared for the worst. Well, we've been busy this week, haven't we? So far, we've looked at 2 specific breathing techniques that can be used for keeping disconnected from a troublemaker. We've looked at how to calm down from being angry and upset, as well as some techniques for teaching children how to do this. We examined the concept of how the eyes are the window to your soul and the conduit in which a troublemaker tries to connect with us. We've examined exactly what a submissive eye line and a neutral eye line looks like, and we also discussed exactly where to look if you or your child is inadvertently faced with a troublemaker and when to do it. And we looked at exactly what to do if your child has been subjected to ongoing abuse or harassment at school that can't seem to be resolved. Your homework for this week is to work on becoming confident in utilising the neutral eye line technique by trying out the exercise that we covered earlier on. And if you're up for it, I'd like you to practice the 2 breathing techniques during the week. I'll send you an email with more details as well as the relevant link. As I mentioned, next week we're going to keep working on more techniques to help you know how you can become and remain disconnected from a troublemaker by your relative position to them, as well as how to use your voice by knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and how your voice can be utilized as a very effective non-violent self-defense weapon. Remember, if you have any questions or experiences that you'd like to share, post them on the group page. Until next time, I'm Gary Simmons. And if there are any questions now, please type them in the box and we see if we can deal with them. If not, you can email them to me or we'll have a look on the Facebook page. Are there any questions? Well, I hope that we got through a bit. I've got Christine manning the chat box. Anything coming through, Christine? So I get to record these questions too. They come through as a text file. All right, let's see. I've got a chat box here as well. More. Oh, thanks everybody. There's a few chats. Thank yous coming through the chats. Breathing techniques for years. Didn't know to use it for this type of situation. Oh, so Liz has been finding her edge. Yeah, it's kind of universal knowledge, a lot of this, but when you apply it to the concept of non-violent self-defense, you have a different perspective. Okay, well, again, lots of thank yous, and I suppose it's getting a bit late during the week, so I really appreciate your time for coming on. You're really helping to make this a successful program. So remember, if you've got any more questions, post them on the Facebook page, because that way we can really chat with them. Also, I've got a few more bonus videos I've got to dig through the archives to put up, and I also have some more resources. When I go to schools, I have like a cheat sheet with some of the techniques we described this week and next week. So once we get through that, I'll pass that on to you as well. Well, everybody, it looks like that's it. So I'll just wish you all a good night, and I'll talk to you online soon. See you, everyone.